So thank you for attending tonight's budget breakdown, our annual presentation of the proposed budget for the 25-26 school year. My name is Lisa Hess, and I proudly serve as superintendent of the Government School District, as well as this community. And I am here tonight with our CFO, Kelly Price, and this event is designed to inform. It's not to serve as a live question and answer session. And in preparation, the district did provide and invite all community members to submit budget-related questions in advance. And so those questions have shaped tonight's presentation, allowing us to deliver a clear and concise, detailed response to address the questions and thoughts of the community. As always, I like to start with our district mission. We begin every presentation in the district by grounding ourselves in the mission, vision, and values. And our mission is stated here as the heart of every decision we make regarding our educational opportunities that we provide to our students. Our vision, where we empower every student to pursue their passion, purpose, and path, was introduced in August 2023, and it reflects the district's dedication to nurturing each student's unique gifts, talents, and interests, ensuring that every graduate has a personalized plan or pathway for life beyond high school. And our shared values have been a long part of this district's foundation, but in August of this past school year, we organized them under 4 different headings to better define and elevate them for our staff, students, and community. And the first heading is world class, and it reflects our commitment to preparing every student for success in a global society, equipping them to adapt and thrive amid the ever-evolving landscape of technology. Intentional centers to cultivating well-rounded students who embrace challenges and aren't afraid to fail as they grow, academically, personally, artistically, and athletically, all while gaining a meaningful understanding of the world beyond our district and the community. Supportive reflect our commitment to fostering a welcoming and inclusive environment, one that empowers every student to learn, grow, and thrive. And finally, engaged. This heading reflects our commitment to offering a diverse range of rigorous curricular and extracurricular opportunities that empower our students to grow their skills in communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. As we begin tonight's presentation, we invite you to view the district and its budget decisions through the lens of our mission, vision, and values, not through a political lens that may not reflect the principles on which our district is built. So to fully understand the budget, it is essential to first familiarize yourself with the foundational data of the district. So right off the bat, we have our students pre-K through age 22. There are 4,158 students that we serve. And if you're asking why until age 22, well, at the beginning of the 23-24 school year, PDE directed districts that they must provide special education students a free and appropriate public education under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act until they turn 22. We have more than 800 employees that are full-time, part-time, and stipend employees on a 100-acre campus with 6 educational buildings. We have 31,900 residents serving 5 municipalities on 41 square miles encompassing rural and urban areas. One example here of our total student population is that 44% qualify for state assistance programs. And a state assistance program example would be SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps, that provides benefits to eligible individuals to purchase food. And this allows our district to participate in what's called the Community Eligibility Program, where we are able to provide free breakfast and free lunch to all students. Also, 53.4% of our families are considered economically disadvantaged, which those percentages are based on an October snapshot of our student enrollment. And they take those numbers of identified economically disadvantaged students and divide it by the total school or district enrollment. Here's our total student population by race and ethnicity. This slide presents a breakdown of students with special education needs, as well as our English language learners. And these two populations continue to grow annually, as you'll see throughout the presentation.
Okay, so how does Governor Mifflin compare to other districts in the county? So in comparison to the 18 other districts for 24-25, we have the 5th largest student enrollment, the 6th largest budget for last year at $83.5 million, the 9th lowest millage rate at 31.55, so that puts us right in the center of the districts in the county, 11th in budget increase with a 3.86% increase in budget last year, and 17th in per pupil spending at $20,394.57. Now in terms of the millage for last year, this is plotting all those districts in the county in the order of smallest to largest. So if you see Reading down there, they're very different from us. And then you see at the end we have Antietam, which is also very different than us. And Governor Mifflin is right there in the middle. So the 31.55 mils from 24-25 puts us just below the county average. The county average there is shown at 31.963. So what most people probably want to know is, will there be a tax increase this year? So this proposed budget does have a tax increase, and that tax increase is 1.64 mils. So what that proposed tax increase means, it's proposed to be a millage of 33.19 for the 25-26 year. That is a 5.2% increase from 24-25. So that, we'll talk about a little more later, but that is our current max index. The average assessment in the district for homeowners is $123,741. That's the assessment, which would be an increase annually of $202.94, or $16.91 a month. And 75% of the district's assessments are $151,300 or less, which would give an annual tax bill of $5,021.65, which shows a $248.13 yearly increase, or $20.68 monthly increase. One thing just to note is many residents do have mortgages. If you have a mortgage, this increase would be within your escrow, so you won't necessarily see it the same way someone who pays their property tax bill might see it. So here's where we're plotting our actual millage versus the Act 1 index. So the Act 1 index, that's the state's measure for determining property tax increases justified by wage inflation. And then there's upwards adjustments based on relative wealth. So Governor Mifflin does get one of those upwards adjustments because our district is not as wealthy as other districts within the state. So this is showing here, if you look at the gold line, that is where our millage is at currently. If you look at that maroon line, that's showing what it could be had we went to the index and max taxes every single year for the past 18 years. So right now, the index is predicted to decrease over the next 3 years significantly. And then here, we're just showing the history of our millage. So this is over a 20-year period. And what you see here is you see that it can fluctuate. So there was times when we did have larger increases, and then times where we were able to keep the millage low. But as needs increase, funding needs to increase in order to make up for that. And the last year, it was 11 years ago in which we had gone to our max. So that was in the year 2013-14 was that year.
So one of the questions that we received was this. The Shapiro administration gave record amounts of money to public schools last year, but our property taxes continue to rise. When will the Governor Mifflin School Board ever give the property owners and taxpayers a break? Within this year's proposed budget, we have several staffing additions. As I said previously, we need to respond to the growing needs of our students in accordance with the provisions of IDEA. And our students with special needs population is growing significantly. So the district must hire additional staff and paraprofessional support staff to ensure that all students receive the necessary support to achieve success. But we also had looked at where we can reduce items. So in an effort to address the projected deficit for the 25-26 school year, we made several difficult decisions, such as not replacing the Dean of Students position at the high school, removing a building tech from the technology department, removing for 1 year 2 professional roles, and not funding the training of teachers in total experience learning through Alvernia College, as we've done in the past. So this training is currently supported through a combination of budget funds, Title IV federal grant funds, and also contributions from GMEF, but the district has in the past also helped fund it, which we will no longer be able to do. And there are several outstanding human resources considerations to address, including we are currently in contract negotiations with GMEA. We have an amazing staff of professional educators and related staff who serve all of our students, and I have to say negotiations are going well, but here are some things that we need to consider when we go into negotiations. Everyone knows there's a nationwide, statewide teacher shortage. We need to compete with other county school districts for wages, and we have approximately 320 staff that fall into the Education Association labor class. Cyber charter schools are a significant hidden cost to our taxpayers. So community members often direct their concerns towards school districts and school boards, urging them not to raise taxes and to keep taxes low. And I understand that. And this sentiment is also echoed by political campaigns. However, the real question that we should be asking is why Harrisburg continues to support for-profit cyber charter schools and allowing them to take currently over $1.5 million of our taxpayer money. Also note, there's a significant increase in special education students in these for-profit cyber charter schools. It's amazing how many of these students go in as general education students and come out as special education students. Do you know what the reason might be? It's because it costs twice as much for them, so they say, to educate a special education student. So we pay, as a district, taxpayers pay $12,909 for a general education student in a for-profit cyber charter school, and $26,585 for a special education student. And when I talk about Harrisburg, I talk about the fact that when you look at cyber charter schools' Future Ready Index, their 4-year cohort graduation rate is just 65%. We have 89, 90% graduation rates across the state in public schools. Every cyber charter school is currently performing in the lowest 5% of schools in Pennsylvania. And student performance in cyber charter schools fails significantly below state averages in English, math, and science proficiency. So that data alone raises critical questions about the continued support for these institutions and the impact that they have on student success, as well as taxpayer money. Another concern here is the unregulated fund balance of these for-profit cyber charter schools. So for example, if you look, their fund balance is nearly $619 million, which stands in stark contrast to the district's 23-24 fund balance of $7.6 million. They are just banking excess funds as for-profit cyber charter schools. And that's your tax money they're taking away from our school district and away from our students. So they're clearly not spending the excess funds to support the special education students they're identifying, as I spoke to you about in the last slide. So claiming or campaigning on not raising taxes is really unrealistic and does not address the root of the problem. So where should we direct our advocacy regarding taxpayer dollars? The answer is clear that we need to speak to our legislators about what's happening with cyber charter school costs.
Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is per pupil spending. So first, we'll go through basic education funding. So it's a state subsidy that's distributed through a formula, and it's to support core educational programs of the district. So the current proposed budget from the governor is a $75 million increase. And Governor Mifflin's share of that increase would be $132,724 increase in our basic education funding. So that's to support our core educational programs. And that subsidy is budgeted for next year at about $9.4 million. This is the lowest proposed increase in a decade that the state has provided for basic education funding. Another one of the questions that we got was related to per pupil spending. So as we said before, the current per pupil spending is $20,394.57 here at Governor Mifflin. And it's simply just our budget divided by the number of students here at the district. And then countywide average there from earlier, it's $24,870.34. What we do here, some of our building budgets, those are based on the allocation of students in the building, so the enrollment. So here at GMIS, their budget is built based on how many students are here at GMIS building budget. And again, the need for additional resources is what we need in order to increase that per pupil spending, in order to get us much more in line with where the rest of the county's at for that. But that leads us right into adequacy. So this was something that was a pretty big topic last year. There was a fair funding lawsuit, but that was put against the state, saying that the state doesn't fairly fund education. So what came of that was adequacy. So what we know now is that they're identifying an adequacy gap. They're saying that the difference between the resources the district currently receives and the resources that they need to adequately educate their students. So the commission from the lawsuit, they looked at academically well-performing schools in the state, and they identified that there's a target that you need to try to hit in terms of per pupil spending. And they said if you can hit that target of spending, then you're going to be able to provide successful academic results from the programs you're able to provide with those funds. So this commission came up with that number based on their data. And then what they do then is they use per pupil weighted factors in order to calculate what your district is spending and what they need. So the per pupil weighted student factors, they allow for additional weights to be distributed to schools for students that are poverty, English learners, special education, and students with disabilities, because these students do require more resources and more support. And then it ensures that districts who have students in those types of populations get the additional support that they need. Which leads us to Governor Mifflin's adequacy gap. So if you look here, that's $14.5 million. The state has underfunded us. And that's a state calculation. So they went through and they calculated what they think that we would need to be able to, what they think we need to be able to spend per student. Then they said, okay, well, this is what you are spending. Where's that difference? That's the difference. It's $14.5 million that they have determined we are underfunded. So what that then means is the state says we're going to need to try to fund you those funds. So right now, what we're showing you there is that middle line there, the $1.59 million. That was what we received this year. We received that after our budget was passed last year. This was part of the governor's budget, wasn't approved until the summer after our district's budget was already passed. And then they're proposing that there will be another supplement added to adequacy this year in this year's upcoming budget. But we're not positive if that's going to happen. Like anything, unfortunately, the state's budget isn't passed yet, so we don't know. And there's a lot of money that they're putting here that they're not putting in basic education funding and special education funding. So there's some concern about where these funds are going to come from. Right now, for that one line that you see there for the proposed funding, that's $500 million in the governor's budget to adequacy in order for us to get that $1.59 million next year. And Only 364 of the 500 districts in the state get adequacy funds. And some adequacy funds that they're getting are maybe very small, $2,000 versus what our district is getting. And again, it's because of the needs of our district and what we need to be able to provide for our students.
So let's talk a little bit more about special education here at the Governor Mifflin School District. And there are two questions. How is special education in your school different than special education in private schools? And how is the projected student population expected to increase or decrease? And what is its impact on tax revenues? So to clarify the distinction between special ed in public versus private schools, students with disabilities enrolled in public schools are legally entitled to FAPE, which is a free, appropriate public education. And that's a right that's not extended to parents or students who choose private education. And FAPE ensures that special education and related services are provided at public expense, under public supervision, and in alignment with state standards. And so these services must also conform to IDEA, as well as the student's individualized education plan that's laid out for them. So in contrast, students in non-public schools do not have an individual entitlement to these same services and programs. And as I said before, special education funding is another critical area where I urge you to advocate to your legislators for increased support. The federal IDEA has not been fully funded since its inception. And the current state subsidy that's determined by a formula that considers both the number of students with disabilities and the estimated cost of their education is not supporting what we need. This funding often falls short. It leaves our school districts responsible for covering the gap between the state's contribution and the actual needs of our district students. So for the 25-26 fiscal year, our school district is slated to receive $3.3 million in special education subsidy, with only $160,225 increase from the previous year, a figure that marks the smallest proposed increase in a decade. And this underscores the urgent need for more robust and equitable funding to ensure that all students receive the education and support they deserve. So this chart clearly illustrates the significant gap between the funding we receive and the actual expenditures required to support our students with the greatest challenges. You see from 2016 to 17 at the bottom, all the way up to 25-26 in the yellow, that is what we receive. That has hardly gone up at all. But you see that our costs for our special education students have significantly risen over the course of those years.
So the next topic we're going to go over is staffing and compensation, because we did get some questions on this. So here we're charting, again, over the course of the other 18 districts in the county. This is the starting teacher salary. So this is a bachelor's step 1 teacher. So would be a teacher first year just out of college. Governor Mifflin currently for 24-25, their starting salary is $52,978. So you can see the county average there. And those steps look a lot bigger than they are, but they're actually not that. And then here's another comparison of the compensation. So for that bachelor's step 1 teacher at $52,978, there are also additional benefits related to that staffing. And then an average salary for a teacher here at Governor Mifflin is $78,318. So that's because teachers move differently on a matrix. They don't just move by years of service, they also move by credits earned. So as teachers earn masters and additional credits beyond that, they also move columns on a matrix. So that's our average salary. And according to Berks County Intermediate Unit's salary surveys data, the county average for a teacher is $77,824. So what about our administration and non-instructional staff? As you can see that we definitely have a lot of questions come in related to this topic. So here we're showing you the staffing breakdown. So this is full-time equivalent staff. So 58% of our staff are our GMEA teachers. 33% are AFSCME, that's our support staff. Those are our union support staff. Then we have our Act 93 support at 5% of our breakdown there. Our Act 93 support, our support staff, but some of their job duties have them outside of our actual support staff union based on some of their responsibilities and some of the things that they're privy to. And then administration, that makes up 4% of our full-time equivalents. So if you look that count that into numbers, there's 25 administrators here at Governor Mifflin School District, 26 Act 93 support staff, 187.5 for the AFSCME because it's full-time equivalents. We do have a lot of part-time staff in that labor group. And then 331 teachers, and that's based on the ads that we have proposed in this budget. Next, we're looking at these as salaries and net benefits by labor group. So net benefits just means net of the share of the states that state gives us towards retirement and Social Security. So if you look at it in this comparison, you see that our Act 93 support group, that was those 26 staff, they would be making up the smallest portion of our total compensation, then administration, our AFSCME labor union, and our GME teachers union. And then this is showing it as a percentage of our entire salaries and net benefits. So 75% of our salaries and net benefits are for our teachers, 13% for our support there, 8% administration, and then 4% for our Act 93 support.
So we did receive a question about the administration and compensation and whether if they meet their goals or not, does that affect their compensation. So administrators are not covered by the collective bargaining unit as the teachers are. Instead, they're part of a goal-based compensation model which increases contingent upon meeting annual goals that are approved and regularly reviewed by me. So it does have an impact. They are expected, as well as I am expected, to meet specific goals in order to increase my compensation. So that compensation structure was designed to, reward leadership performance through those annual adjustments. And so as leaders, we are entrusted, with the community's most valuable asset, its children. And so therefore, it's our responsibility to continue to set goals and improve ourselves. So one of the questions was, is the district funding diversity, equity, and inclusion, or what some people call DEI? And I'll give you the straight answer, no. So DEI is a broad term that is not defined in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it's been thrown around in the political arena, and the district does not have a DEI line budget at all. But as I said before, here at Governor Mifflin School District, we focus on our mission, our vision, and our values that guide our work and when we, how we make decisions and where we allocate our funds. And so in the end, do we continue to work on creating a welcoming environment and an inclusive atmosphere for all of our students and our employees? Yes, we do. And so that's part of what we're doing, is educating, inspiring, and empowering students, as well as empowering every student to pursue their passion, purpose, and path.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about the GMAC and the secondary campus renovations, because this is what we have going on right now. So operating the GMAC, utilities for the last full year, $101,000, which is about 10 to 11% of our district utility cost. Operating supplies, repairs and maintenance was $55,000. Staffing, primarily when that building opened, our staff moved over there, current staff. We did, at that time, hire 3 additional custodial positions for the 3 shifts in order to clean at that building. So now we're on to phase 3 of our secondary campus project. So the key initiatives here are the music and the performing arts spaces, Our existing gym spaces in the middle school and the high school are being reconfigured into learning spaces. We've had a variety of stakeholders involved in this process from day one, and as we've continued on, we've always had many people involved in that decision-making process on where to add, where to cut, and really making sure that we keep our key focuses true. And then there's been some efficiency improvements. Most of these were also included when we built the GMAT, but in the new renovations, we will be having LED lighting controls, HVAC and HVAC controls, exterior door replacements, and low flow plumbing and auto type plumbing. Timeline for this project. This project will be beginning in the summer and starting in the high school, student commons and kitchen is where we're going to begin, and at the middle school, the secure entrance and admin renovations. And then the student commons, choral, keyboard, bridge, and stair is going to begin at the middle school. Then during the school year, at the high school, the cafeteria and adjacent learning spaces will become the new music suite. And at the middle school, we're going to continue with the student commons and the bridge and the portal. Then next summer, for the final phase of the project, at the high school, the auxiliary gym locker rooms will be renovated and the science classrooms. And at the middle school, the band suite renovations will take place, corridor work, and then the LGI, life skills, and autistic support classrooms will have their renovations completed. So what do we know? Right now, we know this is the most important phase of the project, and this is why we set out to do what we did when we started this project many years ago. The low bids were opened just recently. They came in at $23,678,020, and we will require the need to obtain additional funding of approximately $10 million. So right now, this hasn't been decided yet, and it's something that we're going to be discussing at the May school board meeting. So that's where we'll talk more about the funding for the final phase of this project.
So we had several questions about federal and state funding. So please include the source of grants so we know where the money has started and who got their share while it was washed along the way. This includes GMSD grant writer salaries. Where exactly are the tax dollars and federal money received going, and what exactly are they paying for? How are changes at the federal level potentially going to impact the funding the school receives? And what cuts impact will the government Trump administration have on government Flint School District this year? So the Pennsylvania Department of Education provides specific grant codes that must be used to track each expenditure here associated with a grant within our accounting system. And the district is required to report quarterly on the amount spent to PDE. So it's watched very closely, what we spend and what we spend it on. So at the end of the fiscal year, we also have to submit a final report. Grant writing is considered part of our regular job responsibilities. There's no designated grant writer, and we don't have a salary for that work. So that's not funded at all through the grant or through the district. So we have several Title federal grants. Title I is called Improving Basic Programs. This is about $679,000. We use it mainly for to support our reading programs and reading specialists at our K-6 buildings. Title II, Supporting Effective Instruction, $102,000. We use this at Brecknock for class size reduction. Title III, Language Instruction for English Learners and Immigrant Students. We get over $31,000 of that funding from the government to support our English Language Learner program. And Title IV is Student Support and Academic Enrichment, which is over $53,000. We use this for a wide variety of programs, and a lot of the programs that we support are STEM programs, specifically our STEM guitar program at the high school, but also various different STEM programs throughout all of the buildings. We also receive $805,000 of IDEA federal law funds that are mandated. But as you saw previously, that $805,000 does not go far when you have a $13 million budget. We also get mental health grants and school safety and security grants. We received $151,000 from a mental health grant on June 30th. We received $45,000 of school safety and security money back in June as well that we used for security cameras for blind spots. And our mental health grant went to desperately needed social workers in our buildings. We also applied for a competitive school safety grant that we won, over $266,000 that we used for the Conroe Lock project to update the locks at Conroe on the classroom doors to create a more safe and secure environment. And then we also have a school safety and mental health grant for 24-25, over $176,000 that we'll receive and spend by 2026 for security bollards, school police officers, additional social workers, and signage that's necessary for safety for Mifflin Park.
Okay, so here we're going to get into what we've done with the adequacy funds and the Ready to Learn funds. So the Ready to Learn block grant is a grant that we have always received, but they're now calling it the foundation, and we will continue to receive that. And then here we're showing the proposed adequacy supplement that we talked about earlier, that middle funding on that little thermometer that we showed of the $1.5 million. That's the proposed adequacy supplement for next year. So the eligible uses for the adequacy are the same as Ready to Learn. So because it's a grant, it's obviously something that we have to be tracking. Our eligible uses are programs that focus on high quality academics, programs that establish evidence-based practices to improve educational outcomes, programs that design a system of multi-tiered supports, or for uses for increases in cyber-charter tuition costs. So as I said before, the Ready to Learn block grant is a grant we have received before. It's $686,905, and we use that towards maintaining full-day kindergarten. Then this year's adequacy supplement, which was actually only $435.96 was that adequacy supplement. What we opted to use that for this year, we used it to maintain career readiness education with a career ready counselor. We expanded our math and literacy programs. That was through instructional coaches, ESL teachers, and reading specialists. And then we established professional development for Spanish for the workplace. So what the school code provides is that what we received in 24-25, which is what's here on this slide, this becomes part of our 25-26 foundational block. So we know we will get this money next year. What we don't know is if we will get this supplement that's proposed next year. So that's the proposal, but we do know that what we got this year is guaranteed to us based on the school code for next year. Okay, we had some questions coming about transportation as well. So transportation, we're currently in year 2 of a 7-year contract with the first student. That's a national company. They have access to resources, vehicles, and technology updates that we didn't formally have. And it accounts for 4.4% of our budget is how much that costs. And Pennsylvania law does not actually require school districts to provide transportation. So we've had favorable staffing at our location, and we continue to be among the leader of their locations with 5-star drivers. They're able to rate their drivers based on a variety of safe driving characteristics, and we have many drivers that are able to meet that. There had been a question regarding whether we should have put the money towards hiring the aides for the buses. So we do have aides on our special needs buses. That's a requirement for students who have specialized transportation to have an aide on that bus, but they're not required on our regular buses. But if we were to do that, we would need 46 more aides if we wanted to do that. So that really, unfortunately, is cost prohibitive to have an aide on every bus. And then one of the other things I just wanted to highlight was how well our first student team worked with the bus patrol team to get our buses outfitted for our launch of our safety program. So they were able to put 52 stop arm cameras on our buses, and we've cited over 117 drivers so far. from that program. But really, the goal of that program is that there won't be any repeat offenders. So once that happens and you've been cited for that, you know you will never do that again. And that's what we want for our staff and for our students.
So one of the questions, well, two of the questions, how does the district fund athletics, music, and extracurriculars? And can athletic spending be reduced in order to provide more funds for music and art programs or facilities? So the district is deeply committed to the music and arts program, which is an integral part of the curriculum at both the elementary and secondary schools, as outlined in our program of studies. So this investment includes $2,223,614 allocated for salaries and benefits of 18 teachers, along with $117,163 dedicated to supplies and other related expenses. In terms of the district's athletic programs, we have 50 teams with about 1,250 students rostered. It's supported by a dedicated team, including the athletic director, the associate athletic director of activities, 2 athletic trainers, and 111 stipended coaches. And the financial commitment to athletics includes $1,237,523 for stipends, salaries, and benefits, along with $324,743 allocated for supplies and other related expenses. So if you go back to music, you see for salaries and benefits of 18 teachers, over $2 million, and then for athletics, a little over $1 million. And so the district also maintains a separate student activity fund at both the middle school and the high school levels that enables students to raise funds for various clubs. And with about 1,270 students participating across 60 clubs, we have 17 at the middle school and 43 at the high school. And these extracurricular opportunities primarily serve the secondary level, with some opportunities at the elementary level that are really growing, but there are also many at the intermediate school level. And so the financial commitment for the clubs and curricular programs, co-curricular programs, includes $193,963 for stipends, salaries, and benefits, while supplies and other expenses are not allocated for them.
So now we're just going to go through some highlights of the 25-26 budget. So total revenue is budgeted at $89,626,164, and total expenses budgeted at $90,376,164. So that's a deficit of $750,000. Of that deficit, $500,000 is currently in a budgetary reserve line item. That is really for the unknowns right now. We're holding that place there. And if a true deficit would be realized, we would use fund balance in order to fund that. So speaking of our fund balance, this is showing our fund balance over the past few years. So what you're seeing there, the gray is what's committed by the board. So that gray money can only be decided to be spent by the board. That's nothing that anybody else can make a decision upon. And then the maroon, the smaller portion at the end, that's where that budgetary reserve is. It's also where we have any of our prepaids. So sometimes we pay multi-year in advance for things, and then we expense them over the years. So we hold that there because it's already been spent, it just hasn't been expensed yet. So then that gold in the middle, that's our unassigned fund balance. So those are our reserves that we do have available to spend should we need them. Our board policy maintains we must have a minimum of 5%. So right now, our percentage is about 6.5% of our expenditures, but as our expenditures grow, we have to look to make sure we keep enough reserves there, and we grow those reserves in order to protect our general fund, because the general fund's where we're operating out of. And this total fund balance is $7.6 million with all those combined. Here's a look at the assessment breakdown of the district. So the assessments in our district are, as you can see, almost primarily residential. 79% of our district is residential. Combined of the industrial and commercial, that's only 14% of our district. So we really are a unique district in the sense that it's really all homeowners here. So when you look at these numbers, that's where the majority of people fall in terms of when we do have to do tax increases. So this assessment is continuing to decline. We did have some growth in commercial this year, about $500,000 in growth, but our assessments on the residential end declined over $1 million. So we are continuing to decline. That's primarily due to assessment appeals that are taking place. What this does also show, though, is because we have so many homeowners, many people are eligible for homestead tax relief. So that hasn't been addressed yet by the state. They tell us that amount in May, but the governor has proposed another increase in that. We actually have seen some state increases there where we've been able to give more homestead. And that homestead for qualified residents, it comes directly off your tax bill. So the district puts it as a line item subtraction on your tax bill when you get it, and then your bill's issued at that lesser amount. So those savings go directly to the taxpayers. So those savings do not apply to those other categories you see there: apartments, farm, industrial, residential, or commercial, just the residential taxpayers. The other thing I just wanted to mention is related to the Governor Mifflin School District's property tax rebate program. That program is for primarily senior citizens and disabled residents, and it mirrors the state's program, the Pennsylvania State Property Tax Rebate Program. So if you're a resident that receives that from the state, definitely contact our office or someone who might help you prepare your taxes, because we do every year at this time issue checks to those qualifying, where we actually give back money towards those residents. And then here's where I was talking before that shows the decline in our assessments. So this is assessments as a whole. So here in 2025, we are now, we haven't been as low as we have been since 2009. So what that kind of means is with no growth, that if taxes don't increase, we're declining. We're actually would get less revenue out of taxes, which is what that shows in terms of that decline. So all that really can be done at this point would be a countywide reassessment, which I don't think is imminent, or commercial development coming in. That could be something that could really help us here, offset some of that loss we're seeing. Total revenue. So total revenue from earlier slide, it's $89,626,164, and 67% of that is local revenues, and 83% of those local revenues are property taxes. The other larger revenue on the local end would be earned income taxes. Also, interest income is included in our local, and that's going down. Now that interest rates are kind of going back down, we were really blessed there for a while. With those high rates, we were able to invest money, but that is trending downward. So we anticipate we're anticipating about $500,000 less next year than this year for where we are with our interest. And then 31% of our district is made up from state revenues, and just 1% there is federal. And here it shows the revenue by source. So the gold is the federal. So if you look there in the center, 2020 through like 2023, that's COVID funds. Those were the federal COVID funds that came through the district that was able to allow us to programs and staffing and do the things we need to support our students during that time. But those funds are gone now. So we're back to a very small share of federal funding. But what you do see is that we are seeing that uptick in the state there. So that really is showing you the adequacy. The fact that we have been underfunded for so long, and we're hopeful that this is going to continue. And we could see that gray bar there grow more in order to help offset some of our costs. Expenditure comparison by function. So function is kind of like our high-level way we're assigning things here. So 61% of the budget is instruction. We're a school district, that's where we're spending most of our time. So within the instruction function, special education was obviously our largest increase this year. That increase was 22.5%. And that's a lot of the additional staff that we've hired that we need for that purpose. Support services, those are the roles behind the scenes, supporting, supporting the teachers and the students separate from classroom, administration, health, operations, transportation, IT. And the largest increase within the support function was in pupil health, another area where we're providing more support to our students. Then the non-instructional services, that's athletics and community services, which we just talked about recently. And that makes up under $2 million of our budget. It's only 2% of our entire expenditure budget. And then debt service, that makes up 7% of our expenditures. So those are our committed funds that we spend every year annually to pay back our debt for our bonds. And then the other up there, that represents the budgetary reserve I mentioned, that line, which is our safeguard for overages and uncertainties. So expenditure comparison by object. So the object tells us what kind of purchase we're making. That's how the account code structure is set up. And so 70% of our budget is spent there in the maroon and gold, that's the salaries and benefits. Within that's contractual obligations for our labor unions that already have agreements, and also, we've been discussing that we have negotiations ongoing with GMEA. And then within benefits, our retirement, Pennsylvania State Employee Retirement System, that's up 0.1%. That's 34% the district contributes for that, and that's not optional. That's a requirement in the state. We don't have a way to change that to any type of other defined benefit. And then our medical increase is also kind of shown in there within the benefits. So we're in a health trust. We had a not to exceed rate of 10% in the budget, and we did just receive where the rates are going to be for next year. They are coming in at 9.99%. So they did not exceed 10%, but they did not come down. Then if you look at the orange, that's purchase services. So that's things like our substitutes, transportation, utilities, charter that we talked about, placements for students. And then the blue, that's supplies and equipment. So that's where most of our department allocations go, our building budgets, things like that. Those are the things that we purchase regularly for the classrooms. And then again, 7% is our debt of our operating expenses. So as our budget grows, the way we actually spend our money isn't really changing. So this slide might be a little bit tough to see, some of the small writing on that, but this is doing a slightly different comparison. So this is comparing a little bit more by budget. So what we're looking at, so we have nearly 70% that we mentioned before in the maroon, that's our salaries and benefits. So those aren't directly controlled by any of the budgets, whether contractual obligations and any need for new staffing, obviously is discussed before that's added in to our budget. But then if you look at the rest of the way we spend, then you'll see and it's really hard to read that, but debt, again, 7%. Then special education, so that's almost 7% of our budget. And that's separate from what we're spending on our actual teachers in the classrooms. That's primarily going to be contracted services, building budgets, things like that, supplies. Then transportation, 4.4%. Facilities and utilities, there's just over 2%. Technology, 1.8%. Our cyber charter school line there of 1.4%. And then athletics there is less than 1%. So next steps in terms of this proposed budget will be discussed in the May meeting of the school board, where they will decide if they will vote to get this budget posted for public inspection. That doesn't mean that they're approving anything final. It means they would be approving the ability for us to post this. And then we'll continue to make any adjustments as we're able to finalize things.
So how can I learn more about our district budget and finances? And we have the question, how are residents who cannot attend meetings notified of budget issues and spending? So to stay informed about our district, we do encourage you to go to our comprehensive website where you can find a wealth of information on topics from finance to construction projects to school board meetings to upcoming events and so much more. So these are different ways in which our community can stay informed and engaged in what's going on at the Governors One School District. So Kelly and I would like to thank you for attending tonight's budget breakdown presentation. And as always, feel free to reach out to either one of us with questions that you may have. We are both willing to sit down face to face and have conversations with our community members and answer any questions or concerns that you have. But as always, I also strongly encourage you to contact your local representatives that are listed there. And this information in this slide deck will be available on our website, so you'll be able to click on each one of those senators and representatives' names and have their email address accessible to you so that you can contact them, as well as I believe their phone number comes up as well. Additionally, we've provided materials in the back of the room outlining our district's funding situation, including the significant and ongoing underfunding we face from the state and the impact of for-profit cyber charter schools. So in closing, both Kelly and I ask that you thoughtfully consider all the information that we've shared with you this evening. And it's easy to cast blame on the school district and on the school board when you're working with incomplete information or simply just relying on social media. So before criticizing, we do ask that we do take seriously, and I want you to consider that we do take seriously the challenging financial decisions that we make each day as a district and a board, and to remember that every decision that we do make is grounded in the mission, the vision, and the values that I put forth to you at the beginning of this presentation. And so we are always working to do what's best for every single child in this school district as well as the community, because there's nothing better for a community than a strong school system. So we want to thank you again for your time this evening. Please check out our website. They will have a video of this presentation as well as the slide deck available to each and every one of you. And please pick up an informational sheet on your way out. Thank you so much.